There are people who move through the world with a kind of quiet sensitivity. They notice details others overlook. They feel emotions deeply, and they often carry the weight of others without ever being asked to. For these people, life can feel both deeply meaningful and overwhelmingly heavy. Being able to sense the emotions of others so strongly is a gift, but it is also a responsibility that can become difficult to bear. What makes this sensitivity even more challenging is when it meets personalities that thrive on control, manipulation, and self-interest. This is where empaths often find themselves at risk. They bring openness, compassion, and understanding into the world, but when those qualities meet people who are more focused on taking than giving, the balance shifts, and the empath can be left feeling broken and drained. Today, we're exploring how narcissists break the spirit of empaths and what this teaches us about boundaries, self-worth, and healing. Chapter 1. The Power of Emotional Sensitivity. To understand why empaths often end up feeling so worn down, we need to start with the foundation of who they are. At the heart of every empath is a deep emotional sensitivity, a way of experiencing life that goes beyond what most people notice. For an empath, feelings are not just personal, they're shared. Walking into a room, they can almost sense the invisible atmosphere, noticing if the energy is tense, lighthearted, or heavy, often before a word is spoken. Conversations feel layered because they hear the tone, see the body language, and feel the undercurrent all at once. This heightened awareness can make life deeply rich, but also deeply overwhelming. This emotional sensitivity is not something they switch on and off. It is simply the way they are wired. When someone is hurting, an empath feels that pain almost as though it were their own. When someone is joyful, they soak in that joy and carry it with them. This makes them exceptional friends, co-workers, and companions because they are often the people who listen without judgment, who notice when something is wrong even if no one says a word, and who go out of their way to ease another person's burden. Their presence feels safe because they are not just hearing words, they are truly understanding the emotions behind them. And yet, this beautiful sensitivity comes with its challenges. Empaths often struggle to separate their own emotions from the emotions of others. They might go through a day feeling drained without realizing it is because they have absorbed the stress, sadness, or tension of everyone around them. They may sacrifice their own needs just to preserve harmony because the discomfort of others weighs heavily on their hearts. They can feel guilty for setting limits or saying no because their instinct is always to support and care. In their eyes, someone else's peace of mind often feels more urgent than their own well-being. This is the double-edged nature of empathy. It allows empaths to see the world in ways that others cannot, but it also leaves them exposed. People who are kind, respectful, and balanced often appreciate this gift deeply. But those who are self-focused or controlling can spot this sensitivity and use it to their advantage. Because empaths naturally want to give, to support, and to understand, they may not notice when that giving becomes one-sided. They may not realize how easily their kindness can be turned into a weakness in the eyes of someone who does not have their best interest at heart. And this is where the story begins to shift. What starts as a gift, a deep and natural ability to connect, becomes the very thing that leaves them vulnerable. Emotional sensitivity is a beautiful quality, but when it is unprotected, it can feel like an open door. The wrong people will walk through it without hesitation. The empath, wanting to help, lets them in, not realizing that with every step, their spirit is slowly being chipped away. So before we even talk about how narcissists break the spirit of empaths, we have to see the bigger picture. The breaking begins not with loud conflicts or obvious harm, but with the empath's own heart, a heart that wants to feel, to give, to love, and to connect. That openness is powerful, but without boundaries, it becomes fragile. And in that fragility lies the first quiet crack in the spirit of the empath. Chapter 2: How Empaths and Narcissists Cross Paths. When you look at how empaths and narcissists cross paths, it often seems almost inevitable, like two very different forces being drawn toward each other. On one side, you have the empath, who is deeply tuned into the emotions of others, someone who notices pain, fear, or loneliness even when it is carefully hidden. On the other side, you have the narcissist, who craves attention, validation, and admiration, often seeking people who will give without asking too many questions in return. These two energies, though opposite in many ways, can feel magnetized toward each other. For the empath, encountering someone who carries an air of confidence or a strong presence can feel intriguing. Their sensitivity picks up on layers that others might miss, and they sense that beneath the surface there may be hurt, vulnerability, or unspoken struggles. The empath feels drawn to soothe, to heal, to help. They want to be the person who understands what others overlook. It comes from a place of compassion, not weakness. To them, offering kindness to someone who seems complicated feels meaningful, almost like fulfilling a purpose. For the narcissist, meeting an empath can feel like discovering exactly what they have been searching for. The empath's openness, willingness to listen, and natural tendency to give without expecting much back makes them the perfect source of validation and attention. The narcissist quickly recognizes that the empath will go out of their way to care, often without boundaries, often without realizing how much of themselves they are giving away. To someone who thrives on being at the center of others' focus, the empath is a dream. This is where the connection begins to take shape, though it is rarely visible at first. To the empath, it may feel like they have found someone who needs them. To the narcissist, it feels like they have found someone who will provide a steady stream of support, energy, and admiration. The empath believes they're helping. The narcissist believes they are being filled. What starts out as a natural pull between two very different personalities slowly becomes an imbalance. The most striking part is that neither side always sees this clearly in the beginning. The empath does not recognize that their giving has no end point, that they are pouring from a cup that is not being refilled. The narcissist does not pause to consider how their constant taking affects the other person. They are both moving from who they naturally are, one inclined to give, the other inclined to take. And in this imbalance, a dynamic forms that can be difficult to break. But the truth is, this crossing of paths is not just about two people meeting. It is about needs. The empaths need to help, to feel useful, to find purpose through caring for others. And the narcissist's need for validation, control, and attention. When these needs collide, the empath is often the one who pays the higher cost, because the empath gives until it hurts, while the narcissist takes until there is nothing left. The tragedy here is that what begins as a gift of compassion can turn into a cycle of exhaustion. The empath may not even realize how much of themselves they are losing because they are so focused on what the other person needs. They may tell themselves that patience will make things better, or that their kindness will eventually be enough to create change. But in reality, the more they give, the more invisible their own needs become. And so, this is how the paths of empaths and narcissists not only cross, but intertwine. It is not always dramatic in the beginning. It often looks ordinary, even comforting at first. But beneath the surface, the pattern is already set. The empath believes they have found someone to help. The narcissist believes they have found someone to use. And somewhere between those two beliefs, the slow breaking of the empath's spirit begins. Chapter 3. The subtle erosion of identity. One of the most painful parts of this connection between an empath and a narcissist is that the erosion of the empath's identity doesn't happen all at once. It is not sudden, it is not loud, and it is rarely obvious in the beginning. Instead, it is quiet, gradual, and almost invisible even to the person experiencing it. It is like a gentle tide that slowly pulls the sand away from the shore until one day the shoreline looks nothing like it once did. At first, the empath still feels like themselves. They are giving, caring, and showing up in the ways they always have. They feel proud of their ability to hold space for someone else's struggles. They believe that being there, no matter the cost, is a sign of strength. But slowly, something shifts. Their laughter feels less frequent. Their energy feels more drained. Their sense of self begins to blur, but they do not notice it right away because their focus is still on someone else. The erosion often begins with small compromises. An empath will put aside their own needs to meet someone else's. They will silence their own discomfort to avoid conflict. They will agree when they want to disagree, all in the name of keeping the peace. These seem like small choices at the time, but each one chips away at the foundation of who they are. Over time, the empath may look in the mirror and not fully recognize the person staring back at them. Their spark feels dimmed. Their voice feels quieter. Their dreams and desires begin to feel distant, almost unreachable. What makes this erosion so difficult to recognize is that it hides beneath good intentions. The empath tells themselves they are doing what they have always done, being supportive, being compassionate, being selfless. But in truth, what they are doing is giving away little pieces of themselves in exchange for nothing in return. The more they give, the less of themselves remains. The narcissist often contributes to this erosion in subtle ways. They may dismiss the empath's feelings, making them seem unimportant or exaggerated. They may redirect every conversation back to themselves, leaving no room for the empath's thoughts or experiences. Over time, the empath learns to hold their tongue, to step back, to shrink just a little more each day. And while this shrinking might seem small in the moment, its weight builds until it becomes unbearable. The most heartbreaking part is that the empath rarely blames the narcissist for this erosion. Instead, they blame themselves. They wonder why they are not strong enough to handle the weight. They ask themselves why they cannot keep giving without breaking. They convince themselves that they are failing, when in reality, they are simply being consumed by a dynamic that was never balanced to begin with. This erosion of identity leaves the empath feeling hollow. The things that once brought them joy feel muted. The dreams they once carried feel heavy. They may even forget what it feels like to be light, free, and fully themselves. And yet, they keep going because giving feels like the only thing they know how to do. But here lies the truth. When an empath begins to lose themselves, it is not because they are weak. It is because they have poured so much of their strength into others that there is none left for themselves. Their spirit bends under the weight of carrying more than it was ever meant to hold. And without realizing it, they begin to fade into the background of their own life. This is the subtle, silent breaking that so many empaths endure. It does not come with loud warnings or dramatic signs. It comes quietly through the erosion of self until the empath wakes up one day and wonders, where did I go? Who have I become? Chapter 4. The Breaking Point. The breaking point does not usually arrive as a sudden explosion. It does not come as an obvious storm. More often, it arrives quietly, in moments that seem ordinary, but carry an unseen weight. It is the point where the small cracks that have been forming in the empath's spirit finally give way under the pressure they have been carrying for far too long. It might begin as a moment of exhaustion so deep that even the simplest tasks feel impossible. It might be a quiet moment alone when they realize they no longer remember what brings them joy. It might be a sudden wave of emptiness that leaves them feeling detached from themselves. And in that moment, they understand something they have avoided admitting for a long time. They are no longer whole. The breaking point is not always dramatic. There are no alarms, no flashing signs. It often arrives as a quiet surrender. The empath finds themselves saying no more often, not because they feel stronger, but because they feel too worn to say yes. Their boundaries, once invisible and soft, begin to take shape, but they feel shaky and uncertain. This is both a moment of pain and a moment of awakening. The empath may not fully realize it yet, but their breaking point is also the beginning of a choice, whether to keep fading or to start reclaiming themselves. Before the breaking point, there is often a deep internal conflict. The empath is torn between wanting to continue giving and wanting to protect what remains of themselves. They feel guilt for wanting space. They feel fear of letting go. They feel sadness that the person they once were seems further away than ever. This is the most confusing part. The breaking point is not always clearly defined. Sometimes it is a long, slow unraveling rather than a single moment. For some, the breaking point comes with clarity. There is a realization that the way they have been living is unsustainable. They see that their energy has been drained to the point where there is nothing left to give, not because they have failed, but because they have been carrying too much for too long. For others, the breaking point comes in the form of quiet numbness, a place where feelings of hurt and exhaustion are so deeply buried that they can barely name them. The breaking point is the moment when the empath must confront a truth they have avoided for a long time, that they cannot pour endlessly from an empty cup. It is the moment when they must face the fact that giving without boundaries eventually erases the giver. And it is also the moment when they are forced to look inward and ask the hardest question of all: who am I if I am no longer given? This is not an easy place to be. The breaking point carries pain, uncertainty, and fear. But it also carries the seeds of change. It is here that the empath stands at a crossroads. The choice between continuing to live in the patterns that have caused this erosion or stepping away and beginning the difficult work of reclaiming their own life.